Boomers. The list of things more insufferable than dealing with boomers is a very short one. It's as if they have a sixth sense that allows them to strike when you're the most irritable. And like a type annoyance Pokemon, they have a characteristic move they love to use, complaining about your use of the internet. In a handful of phrases, they manage to squeeze out a copious amount of superstitious gobbledygook about how much time you spend on the computer, all while obnoxiously looming over your shoulder to watch you download Skyrim mods and Doom wads. And when their lecture is done, they slither back downstairs to watch whatever MK Ultra programming is beaming out of their 60-inch LED TVs, which only makes their objections to our consumption of media funnier, considering they're happy being fed an infinite course of a politically charged and geriatric version of Teletubbies. And they have the gall to go bug their kids for watching TikTok compilations. In their minds, because their source of entertainment is under the auspices of the establishment, it simply can't be wrong, regardless of how trivial, diversionary, and consistently untrustworthy it may be. Meanwhile, we can access every single morsel of information known to man through the web, but there are no flashy credit card ads lodged in it, which basically means it can't be reliable. It's almost poetic how the big screen the boomer sits in front of gives so little in the way of anything, while the little screens they so despise are a window to the endless expanses of the internet. And perhaps that's what truly annoys them. The lack of main guidelines, the all-too-open nature of the internet, and all of the esoteric info it offers without any filters. The skepticism it symbolizes must really grind the gears of people whose main interest is just to not bother anymore. The boomer's MO is blissful ignorance. The prospect of questioning the current authority is a foreign one to them. True patriots don't question the government. And alternatively, true Democrats don't peddle preposterous conspiracy theories. Boomers are perpetually tangled in the minutiae of the Euclidean political spectrum, never able to see a bigger picture or realize how much trouble the democratic process causes them daily. Instead, they're entertained by the little hell world they've fashioned, relishing in their encyclopedic knowledge of Hillary's emails and Trump's mishaps. In their heyday, everything the American boomer needed was handed to them since childhood. College costing a few $100, but ultimately unnecessary because you could get a good salary without a diploma. And if you didn't like your job, cross the street and find a new one. Owning real estate and being married by 22 is just the standard. So the trust in the ships that ruled over their waters was at an all-time high. But, as Dostoevsky once said, if you give man economic prosperity so that he has nothing to do but eat cake, sleep, and continue the species, he will still play you some nasty trick out of sheer ingratitude. With hardship absent, there is no motivation to understand the ethics that drove American civilization into being as wealthy as it was. This, mixed with some coordinated efforts behind the scenes, created hippies. Young people who boldly rejected all the responsibilities they were being asked to take up. As they knew they could just ride off the stability their forefathers created, the culture conveniently shifted towards joining a commune and writhing in mud as a pastime. All the excessive drug-taking and scum-sucking hedonism justified by cheaply putting a flower in the barrel of a gun and calling it a day. Like birds, they ate the fruits of superficial Prince Charming revolutionary ideology that was popular at the time. And then, they proceeded to shit out the seeds of culture-paralyzing postmodernism deep into the chest of the civilization that gave birth to them. Those seeds grew, pervasively branching out and dropping various kinds of detriment into society. Bauhaus into the arts, Frankfurt and Foucault into academia, the list goes on. I confidently blame universities for the decrepit state of the millennial generation, but the self-destructive philosophies they imparted onto their students weren't brought here by Soviet missiles. No. They were imported by godforsaken, red-faced, TV-watching, Israel-foreignating, lawn-mowing, grandkid-annoying, John Lennon-imagine-masturbating motherfucking boomers. And it's thanks to them that we now have an entire generation of roasty single moms, wine-aunts, and indebted burnout chads. And as a wise man once said, the next generation will be the real victims. Some of these broken people are most unfortunately fertile, and will pass their brokenness down onto their children. Whatever tactics were employed to market colleges to boomers worked wonderfully directly, because it's more or less the thing they're the most adamant about putting their kids through. Somehow, they're convinced that putting your children tens of thousands of dollars in debt so they can get indoctrinated is the only way to make them employable. With the demand artificially raised to such heights, and the federal government handing out unlimited sums of money in loans for education, college costs rocketed up. The students, with newly acquired socialist ideas swimming around in their heads and economically crippled, start blaming capitalism for all of their ills instead of realizing how their parents fucked them over. And since every Tom, Dick, and Sue is in uni, it's now a 4-year kindergarten campus while simultaneously being a Fallout whorehouse chock full of chems. But none of this matters to the boomer, whose idealization of college is almost erotic, perhaps because of his own experiences with it as the hippie he once was. Never mind that their daughters have HPV and their sons are getting in bisexual ketamine orgies. That dinky cap and diploma that's plummeting in market value are status symbols that they just can't live without. For what will all their boomer peers think of them? It's a perfect opportunity to live their dreams vicariously through their children, and missing out on it would shatter their world entirely. So, even if it's for a Brazilian basket weaving degree, they'll make you take that 250 grand chunk of debt, just so they can feel a little bit better about having raised good-for-nothing children. You know, having these things in mind, my generation is quite the improvement. If boomers were on mind-melting hallucinogens and millennials are on heroin, Zoomers vaping seems like a much preferable alternative, especially considering that all they have to do is look to their fellow teenagers to see kids who have been led by their parents into being transgendered freaks. I'm surprised we're not on heroin too, but we're far too tech-savvy to resort to chemicals for escapism. We don't play Minecraft as much because we're work-ethicless bums who are addicted to video games. We do it because every nook and cranny of our lives is being invaded by a nightmare we didn't create and want nothing to do with. Even first-person shooters have imported transgendered wheelchair-bound World War II soldiers. Everything is a symptom of what this generation of thick-headed old fucks got us into. Even after fucking everything up for us, they still have the nerve to look down upon our pastimes when theirs is watching the horrors they've wreaked on their successors getting live coverage on Fox and CNN as they polish their brand new motorcycle. Please tell me, how else are we supposed to deal with seeing the mainstream trying to directly molest us, maim us, castrate us, and tell us we're supposed to be gay? None of which is a byproduct of our actions, rather being ultimately the fault of the ignorance of our predecessors. Burying ourselves in Minecraft is the only solace we have, and it's a relatively benign one when compared with what previous generations did in their free time. Furthermore, not only are we expected to cope with the issues we face quietly, we're expected to solve them. We must be disarmed and have our backpacks transparent because of a mental health issue we didn't create. We're supposed to economically undermine ourselves because of a vague global pollution issue that people all across the world are at fault for. We're the scapegoats because our parents are absent and our older siblings are pharmacologically disabled. It's one thing to have to dish out money for stupid debts we got ourselves into. It's another to have to inherit and pay for the misdeeds of our fathers. And here was I, thinking we had gotten over Hammurabi a long time ago. This is why people like me ought to say and do things that aren't considered acceptable. It's easier for millennials to ignore their nightly mental breakdowns than to admit that they were betrayed by the very people they are supposed to trust. But I think it's by crossing those lines that we can retroactively help soothe the Stockholm syndrome that millennials have for boomers. Because if we don't push for a cultural shift and make them comfortable with this sort of dialogue, who will?